feeling it through your hands, that's still what it is. Haptics can help people feel rhythm, movement, impact, and direction. I was at this conference in Germany last year, and there's this company who makes a navigation belt for blind and visually impaired people, and it's called the Navi Belt in English, or Das Navigürtel if you're German, which is great. And you can put maps on there so that as you turn around, the haptic moves around you for the direction that you need to go, and it's amazing and slightly strange at first. Traditional haptics then are usually created using small vibration motors. So until we got very fancy with Apple iPhones and all of that kind of thing, it was literally, you would have a motor, it would have a weight on the end of it that was off center, and every time it span, it would create a vibration. These motors usually contain an uneven weight, and as the weight spins, it makes the device shake. This works well for simple effects. You know, you can get the motor spinning, oh, I've got a text message. But obviously, those have a spool up time, which is the time that it takes the motor to spin up to that speed, which you can't really control, and they have a slowdown time, so it's not instant, and often it creates one sense. You can't really change the pitch or the power, which is why a lot of old phone vibrations are kind of just a series of different buzzes. A basic motor has limited control. I've said this already because I've done animations and I can't see the slides. I'm so good at technology, everyone. Thank you very much. Haptic transducers can create much more detailed vibrations. They are similar to speakers in how they work. A normal speaker moves a cone to push sound through the air. A haptic transducer is attached to the object or surface, and that makes the surface vibrate. So in a way, the surface that you attach it to is the thing that becomes the cone. Yeah, turning sound into vibration. This is called a butt kicker. This is one of the first uses that most people who are aware of haptics in music are aware of. It's a thing used by drummers and bassists, and it shakes the seat they're on or a surface they're stood on. Because haptic transducers work in a similar way to speakers, you can actually use audio equipment and techniques. An audio signal could be sent to a speaker, so it can be heard. That's your PA mix in your club. But also a haptic transducer, so it can be felt. So if you're a bassist, you might have your in-ear monitor pack, but then that doesn't have much of the bass you want, so you have one of these as well. This means sound and vibration can be designed to work together. If haptic transducers are like speakers, can I use them with spatial audio software, I hear you ask? Yes. Spatial haptics. This is something that I've worked on, and I think a few people are doing interesting things now with, but this is where my understanding comes in. In a sound system, panning, as said before with your traditional spatial or surround systems, can move a sound between different speakers. For example, a sound can move from the left speaker to the right speaker, a bit like at the beginning of Bohemian Rhapsody. The same idea can be used with haptic transducers. A vibration could move. This was what really got me thinking about this at first. The first version of this entire system that I made was just 2 of them, and I started experimenting with the same panning algorithms that people use for binaural hearing, and all of that. So it was the time difference and the volume difference to see, can I create the feeling of someone tapping on a table and tell the direction that it's coming from? This creates spatial haptics. This is my system. It's on the table there. I'm going to do a demo afterwards because otherwise I'm going to massively run over. I also didn't start a stopwatch, so I hope someone is keeping time. My system consists of, I'm going to try and use the laser pointer on a screen. Nope, that does nothing. Great. An amplifier, which is this yellow box. It has 16 small transducer combinations and then a bunch of cables. So many cables, you would not believe the amount of cables. But there are kind of 2 options that I've made for mounting this because it's designed to be modular. One of them is the grid, which I'll show you today, which is a 4x4 grid of these little transducer pillars. And then there is another layout which is hand-shaped so that you can have an individual finger on each one. But these are designed to be taken off a base plate and moved around. Each column also has on top of it a force-sensitive resistor, which means that the amount of pressure you apply to it changes the resistance. And if you've got very calibrated ones, like this does, you can see how much force someone is applying to a surface, and you can map that to be controls. Or if you're doing research, you can see, does the amount of force someone applies to this change how much they feel the haptics? Is there a level where the pressure becomes numbing? And all of those kinds of things. There is one other massive barrier to entry, though, for making immersive audio, because you can do haptics, and that's lovely, and you can start just wiring that into your main front of house speaker system, but cost is a really, really big barrier for all of this. This is a Genelec 8020. It is an absolutely amazing, really, really good sounding speaker. If I had the money to, I would buy these. They sound great. They have a very good frequency response. There is something very important for most spatial audio when you're mixing for it, you're taught, assume that every speaker that is in this sound system is the best it can be, because every speaker is expected to be able to do everything so that the panning works really nicely. Each one of these costs 400 quid, which is an incredibly fair price. They're made of solid metal. They, once again, are the best sounding speakers you can get. But suddenly, if you need 24 of them around a person, you know, because you want to have your sound panning about, you want to have your overhead movement, you want to have all of this, you need 24 of those, and then that becomes more. So making a spatial audio system means you need lots of speakers, and each one of those is 400 quid at a minimum. You can get cheaper ones, but they don't necessarily sound as good, and it kind of goes against that kind of conventional wisdom of everything needs to sound the very best it can. A way to get audio from a computer to the speakers, so that's usually a USB sound card of some description. A way to amplify that audio, if you've got fancy speakers like those Genelec ones, you can just run wires and they have built-in amps, so that means that you have to plug each speaker into 2 cables, one for audio, one for power, or you have to have a massive rack of amplifiers, so your sound comes out of the USB sound card or whatever into your amplifier, out of that into your speaker to wherever that's going, 24 times, or however many times you have speakers for. So much wire. There is so much wire no matter what you do because of all of these steps. You've got to connect in 3 separate places unless you're using something combined. I made a low-cost spatial audio system to try and not have all of these things be issues. And for that, I wanted to create an immersive audio system without using expensive professional equipment. I've just kicked a whiteboard, sorry about that. I built a custom USB sound card which has 24 separate audio outputs, a 20-watt amplifier for each output, so each one of those is combined, so you don't need to run one cable from your output to your amplifier, and then 24 independently controlled channels, so you can send something different to each one. And with that, I also made custom omnidirectional speakers. A computer sees the system as one large multi-channel sound device, and then you can send audio to it. This is the system in a field, because I was in a field and I took a lovely photo of the system. So there is grass everywhere, and then there is this kind of black box of an amplifier with a yellow button on the front, because I really like yellow. This is an important thing. No matter what you're doing, whether that's haptics where you're using sound, whether that is a surround sound system, you need to have, if you want independent control, you need to have an amplifier for everything that you need independently controlled. So if you're in a very large venue, most people think, oh yeah, well I've got this PA stack of speakers at the front of the stage, and that's great, and that's 2 channels of audio, and then the speakers further back are playing the same sound. But that's not really ever the case. In a lot of very modern shows, those big stacks of speakers at the front are all independently controllable because you need to do timing to make sure they don't sound rubbish. And then each set of speakers further back in a festival is also independently amplified, because what people do is they make it so as that sound moves from the stage towards that next set of speakers, then the sound plays on those ones, so it goes back in sync. Otherwise you have these horrible echoes, it can create feedback. So yeah, no matter what you do and no matter how you're doing it, if you want to have independent control or if you just want to have finer control, you need a whole bunch of amplifier. Omnidirectional speakers, this is the other thing that I've done. Most speakers mainly project sound forwards. Omnidirectional speakers are designed to spread out the sound more evenly around them. Instead of creating one narrow listening direction, they create a wider sound field, so the audience doesn't need to be in a central position. This is the other thing which is a struggle for a lot of people trying to do immersive sound and immersive haptics, is shared listening can be really tough. In a traditional surround sound system, whether that's for cinema, whether that's in a venue, there is a sweet spot. So if you're in a cinema, you might have often heard the trick, people say, oh, you need to sit in the very middle so it sounds the best. And that's because when you're mixing for that kind of thing, every sound is aligned to meet up in the middle of the room. So the person in the middle has an amazing experience, but if you're to the other side, you're not getting everything arriving at the same time, so it doesn't sound as good. And if you've got people around you and you are in the middle, it's also not going to sound as good because they're blocking your ears. And then it's the same with haptics. If you want everyone to be able to feel it, you either need to be able to shake a very large surface area, which you can do by making a haptic floor, or you need to be able to individually provide those to everyone. So being able to fill a larger area with less speakers and being able to kind of emit sound out or haptics out in every direction instead of having it be personal to each person allows you to do that, and it allows you to do it for cheaper, and it allows you to do it for well, with less complexity. There is one important thing to think about on that front though, which is being able to opt in or out of an experience is very, very important. So if you are at a very loud venue, I mean, the main example that people think of is if you're going to a nightclub and it gets too loud, everyone goes to the smoking area because there's no subwoofers out there. And that's not really great if you want everyone to be able to enjoy an experience. So what using haptics in the floor would allow you to do is that you could have some areas which are vibrating really powerfully, some which are vibrating less, and some which aren't at all. And for all of those people, the way that you can opt in or out of that experience is that you can just move to a different spot. And because you're using a system that allows for wider dispersion, you can do that and you're not going to miss out. And that's really, really important, which is why I care about omnidirectional speakers. Omnidirectional speakers, I hear you say though, those sound confusing and hard to make. Traditional surround sound often works best in that sweet spot, as I've said. People outside of that position hear a different balance of speakers. I'm going over my own points again because I can't see my speaker notes. Traditional speakers Omni ones spread the sound out wider, so you can move around and you can share an experience. Omnidirectional speakers can also really help to create envelopment. Envelopment is a term that you will hear a lot of people who do spatial audio say, and a lot of people who care about immersive audio will say, because envelopment is the feeling that the sound surrounds you and that you are inside of the audio environment. So you're feeling enveloped by the sound, you're feeling that you're wrapped in it. Using many speakers around a space can make individual speakers less noticeable because, you know, they're all working together, but it can also make the room feel like one connected sound environment. Using omnidirectional speakers gives you a bonus advantage, which is because they're shooting the sound out in every direction already, you can use less speakers around a space and still have that feeling. My system can be set up easily. Here it is in a field, an electromagnetic field. And so you can kind of bring it anywhere. It can fit inside of a case. You can fit 6 speakers. You can fit them in a ring, which people will start referring to as the sound seance ring for some reason. My system can be broken. Imagine if each of these speakers cost 400 quid. You would not be having a good day if you left somewhere with 800 quid's worth of damaged speakers. You'd be like, oh no, I can never bring this ever again. I left that festival going, only 5 quid worth of damage. Beautiful, absolutely fixable. And that is a major thing with having the cost of it. If something is cheaper to make and still is good, it means that you are happy to bring it to places that you're not sure it will survive, such as a field where there's 50-50 chance of rain, according to some people you ask. And you're happy to share it with people because the worst that can happen in my case is that someone breaks about 24 quid worth of speaker parts. And it's actually really, really hard to destroy 24 quid's worth of speaker parts, even if there's a man with flamethrowers all around you. So better access to technology means you have better community because it means that people can share what's going on. They're happy to actually try things. They feel welcome. With these speakers, it's really great because they shoot sound out in every direction. I know I keep saying that, but it's really cool. And it means that someone on the other end of the field can hear that something's going on, and then they can walk towards it, and then they can step within that space, and it will somehow feel very different. It was something that Lee said, actually, as well, because they were also in the field. But a lot of people had happened where spatial reverb was running to make a space feel very big. That doesn't really work until you opt into the experience and you cross the threshold. So you'll be outside of the speakers going, that's making noise, but I'm not sure. And then you step in, and suddenly it feels like you're in a much larger space. So people outside can still hear what's going on. They can get a sense of what's happening. But once you enter that and you choose to enter, then it's suddenly better. This is really great 2 examples as well of that thing of a sweet spot. If this system had as much of a sweet spot, you wouldn't be able to get that many people in the ring of speakers without going, oh, this is a bit naff. But because, you know, you might be sat on an edge, you will still have coverage, and that's great. Better access to music, technology, and I just want more people making music, means that you will have more community and more people around it. If this didn't exist, how would I have met so many lovely nerds, you know? So this is one of the wonderful things. Thank you. I'm going to say, does anyone have any questions? Because I can also demo this stuff. But for now, yeah, thank you very much.
Anyone has any questions for Robin? Feel free to shout out. I think we're small enough group to manage.
Yeah. Also, I know that talk was shorter, but it's because my demos are really cool and I want everyone to be able to try them.
How big do you think you can make your setup of omnidirectional speakers before you start taking into account speaker sound?
That's a really great question. The main thing is the distance apart, kind of the sound can break apart with the volume. You want everything to have a consistent volume throughout. So I found that once they get to about further than 3 meters apart, you notice a bit of a drop. But you know, because you can just add in another one, you can fill gaps. So that was quite, I think at one point there was 20 people crammed into a ring of speakers no larger than this room, having a great time, and you could make it bigger than that. Any other questions? That either means I've done a great job or I've done terribly. So thank you either way. Yeah, a large chunk of the talking is going to happen as I show people things. So if I move the spatial haptic system to the middle of the room there, I can show you some of the software behind it and how it works. I'm not sure if the stream's still happening, but if people on the stream do have questions, great, thank you. Thank you. So yeah, demo time. One of the things that is another barrier, which is hard to talk about in a PowerPoint presentation because showing people that that's a barrier is really boring in picture form, is software. It's really actually obviously quite complex to be able to move things about. I'm going to change my screen mirroring setting so that it is the entire screen, and this might kind of go wrong. That's my liked songs, that's great, thank you Spotify. But yeah, one of the things that's really tough is that software to spatialize sound. There's a few really lovely open source ones, and open source software is amazing because you can do whatever you want with it, but open source software is also really, really difficult because you can do whatever you want with it. And there is often a large barrier to access, which is that the type of people who make open source software are a certain level of technologically advanced. So you can use things like SPAT with this because everything I've made is just a USB sound device. You can literally play Spotify through the haptic transducers, put them on your head, and feel like the sound is coming from inside of your head. I made some really simple control software as well because when I made this system, it was initially for a visually impaired researcher, and so for him, a GUI is really rubbish. I've made a GUI so that people can see what's going on, but actually what matters much more is the way of scripting for it. So this is a way of controlling what the speakers do for the spatial haptic system. And this is why it's not on a PowerPoint because, oh my God, imagine if I just put a screenshot on there. But this is a really simple way of making text files to control what's happening. And there is a guide that goes with this so that you can actually get a sense of how to make these scripts. And you can, for example, speak to a large language model who has that text file and say, I want to, for this project, make something where the sound starts here, it moves to here, it changes pitch, and it starts doing all of these movements. And the other thing is, you can then say, I also want to be able to take in the data from those force sensitive resistors so that people can tap on it and have sound move out. A really demo that someone made that I do not have the code for. If you know who you are and you're watching, because I think I've told people about this, please send it to me, where they can tap on one of the transducers and then the sound will ripple outwards and back inwards, so you can smush it down. But yeah, you can literally write, I want a sound to happen here at this frequency and this amplitude, wait, do a new sound, you can do movement, and then you've got your things like your ITD exaggeration and your ILD exponent. That's the kind of weird term for a thing because it's interaural level distance and interaural time difference. Which is basically if you have a head, you have a head-related transfer function for your binaural, which means, if I clap here, the sound is going to arrive here first and then here. That's the time difference. And if I clap here, it's going to be louder here than it is here, and that's the level difference. And one of the things that we were looking at was how much do you need to exaggerate that before you can feel it with your hands? And it turns out a lot less if you are used to using your hands to read Braille or for tactile information than if you are not used to that, because I was not very good at it. But it means that you can do things like exaggerate that. And then you can make lovely demos where sound moves. And I'm going to plug this in, and things might temporarily break because I've got like 3 different adapters running from my computer. But yes, I will show you, this is demo4.txt. All of them have really catchy names. But yes, this is the spatial haptic system. Let's run that. Let's run the visualizer. And some of you will have seen this already because I was testing it earlier, but you can literally just put in the text location of one of these files that you've made, and then you will have a screen come up. and it will move the sound around. If you're in the room, you can probably hear the sound happening. This is another really lovely thing, actually, is that if you are using a transducer for haptics instead of a motor, you don't have the issues of spool up time and spool down time. So you can do things like actually setting specific pitches. You can do things like setting the amplitude and making it louder or quieter. And you can do multiple things at once, and you can do polyphony on different channels, which is something that still, even in the more modern devices, isn't as easy to do, because most of them are still just like, I want really powerful bass, and you can get really powerful bass, but usually that's at the cost of, well, it takes a while to become really powerful, and you can't change the note or feel it, which is why this is interesting. What could you do if you could change the pitches, and can people feel a change in pitch? Can people only hear it and it's helping them feel it, because you can get those kind of psychoacoustic tendencies happening? And it becomes this really complex question of, how do I do haptics without the psychoacoustic element? Because that's sound, and that's where the base of this entire system comes in. It's something called TPU. It's a flexible material. It's designed to slightly dampen the sound, but it's not working as well as I would like it to at the moment, because you can still hear it through a table. But yes, spatial haptics, using spatial audio algorithms to do haptic feedback. That's that. Thank you very much. If anyone wants to come and try it, feel free if you're happy to be on video. If you're not, the rest of the demos are going to be on this and in another room, so I'm not sure how much you would like to continue streaming that.
People can come up as long as everybody's comfortable going out on YouTube and demo. If that's stopping people from interacting, then I don't know.
Yeah. You can be on the telly. Imagine it like that.
There are a whole 5 people watching. So.
Excellent.
Wow, absolutely massive. Great. Welcome to our 5 viewers. If you do have any questions, speak now or forever hold your peace or whatever. But yes, that's spatial haptics. I think that wasn't terrible, so thank you very much. Yeah. Very happy with the system. Does anyone have any questions now they've seen this bit? Does anyone want to listen to the speakers that are outside? Lovely. Should I take this off? Watch everyone watch as I struggle with a buckle. There we go.
Do we need your laptop?
We will need my laptop here. Yes.
So if anybody wants to try out this stuff first, and then we shall move over to the special sample.
Yeah.
But I recommend it tickles.
I recommend it tickles is a great one, I think. Cool. Lovely. Oh yeah, I did make spatial quiche. I forgot about the spatial quiche. I'm worried that my talk was way too short, but equally, I'm going to try a different demo, which is technically made for a different layout than the one I've got.
Don't forget, tea and coffee is free. Help yourself. What's the time for viewers at home?
What time are we going to make?
If you'd like to put your hand.
It was going to be 5:30, but I wonder if we just run a little earlier in general.
5:15?
Let's go 5:15.
Is that working? What's
Yeah,
happening? Okay, perfect.
yeah, I feel like going across.
This is really putting that like level distance. You can see that this was designed for a handshake, but it's still quite fun.
How come you could hear sounds on the last one that you can't on this?
It will be the volume that they're playing at, and also where that bass, the TPU bass, isn't working necessarily as well. It will be the resonant frequencies of the table. So everything that you touch has a resonant frequency. So how people would shatter a glass with their mouth is they're making the pitch that it will shatter at, and it just starts resonating.
Each one, okay, it's different. No, sorry, it's not reacting to my touch.
At the moment, no. I wanted
It's
to.
pre-programmed.
Yes.
So if someone was deaf, they would just be
Feeling that.
feeling
Yes.
it. Yeah.
I might put it onto a more dynamic one than this one. Let's
It's
do
like being electrocuted.
Do I want to touch it?
It's like being electrocuted, but in
I don't know.
a good way.
It's just that's what I imagine. It's like being electrocuted.
Oh, that's fair.
What did you mean about like if you put more pressure on it, it feels different?
they magic on? Was there a...
You got it?
No. I'm being inept. Does it snap out or does it just...
No, it should just clip on.
Okay.
They're quite sensitive, so you can even stick it, just hold it. It's quite easier.
Will it go...
It was, yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, I'm going to chuck all the stuff out and put it in my pocket because I can't see those. If it's just there, is that okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
There we go then. Yeah. Hello, I'm Rachel and I'm an academic. I'm a physicist and I do a little bit of haptics, but it's kind of on the side. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I do day to day and how we got into doing some of the haptics things. So I've got seeing and feeling sound, because what I think about a lot at the moment is how we can visualise sound and how we can use that for doing something fun. So I'm part of the ultrasound group at Warwick, and we do lots and lots of different things. Everyone thinks when we do ultrasound we're going to be doing babies, but we are working with ultrasound, which is very high-pitched sound, so high that humans can't hear most of the frequencies, but they're useful for lots of different things, like parking sensors in cars, which is something I'm going to come back to. So everyone thinks that we do babies, and we don't. That's Tiny D, forgive me. So, that's my oldest. Every single sonographer, when they did pictures of both of my kids, they took ones of them beating me up. And then they handed them to me and laughed. Anyway, what we actually do, we don't do any medical stuff really. We do a thing called non-destructive testing, which is trying to use sound to find things that you can't see. So trying to find things like cracking in railway tracks or corrosion in pipework. And all of the research that we do comes down to that as its basis. But a lot of it comes down to sound. So in the very olden days, when they were making railway tracks and they wanted to make sure that the tracks were safe, you'd got someone that would wander along with a hammer and would hit the rails, and they got such good hearing that they could tell this difference between a good rail and a bad rail. That's actually what my great-grandfather used to do, and I never found that out until I'd already been looking at railway tracks for a couple of years, and then someone in the family actually said, do you know that's what your granddad used to do? But I don't have that good hearing or that good distinguishing of the different sounds, so we can do it using computers. And the basics of ultrasound nowadays is it's exactly the same as if you're a bat trying to catch your prey. You make some sound and you listen for echoes coming back. So we can take a thing called a transducer, which just makes our sound and listens for it, and we can go, oh dear, there's a bit of a hole in the structure that we're looking at, we want to make sure it's safe. So we can make some sounds and listen for them coming back. And if they're travelling a very long way, so they're travelling all the way to the bottom of the track and coming back, we can measure when they arrive. We use a little equation. Speed is equal to distance divided by time, and we can work out how far they travel. And I realised I forgot to do a visual description, so breaking into what I was saying, I am the height of an 11-year-old, I've got stupidly long hair, and my glasses have got tiny diodes on, but they are hidden, so no one notices, and I pass under the radar and make sensible glasses. There, that's that bit. Anyway, we can measure how far apart these echoes come, just like if you're shouting into a room and you're listening for the echoes coming back, you can tell how far the sound has gone by how long the echoes take. So if we go above a bit that there's a hole inside it, the echoes get closer to that. This is what we do. We're always thinking about sound, but ultrasound, so stuff that we can't hear. Now, one of the things I'm really interested in is how could we use that in a different way? So could we use sound to see things a bit clever? If we could do something like taking this bit of structure and sending some sound through it, and we know the sound is going to go through the metal bits, but it's going to be blocked by any holes in there. Could we maybe have something that we can use to see? Because if we had a nice little layer, a paint layer on there, we might be able to see a shadow where the sound doesn't come through. So I'm just going to run over here because I've got a bit of paper. If I've left it there, I have. Coming back. I'm getting a bit scatty because I'm so excited by all of this, looking at different things and seeing those things. That was so much fun that I'm forgetting everything that I was going to say. Anyway, one of my things is, can we use sound to see? And if you see people walking around with the smart canes, there are some very clever canes now that use ultrasound. And they've got buzzers in the handle, and they're sending ultrasound off towards the floor so that you can see trip hazards. And they're sending ultrasound up towards head height as well, and listening for the echoes coming back, using things just like parking sensors. And in the handle, you've got a set of buzzers so it can tell you where all the hazards are. There's also one that links in with Google Maps. And I've done some talks where I've had a picture of someone with the cane and their phone out, and I've had complaints because they're saying, why are they using the phone? And it's because it gives you speaking directions. So you can have the GPS to guide you, while you've also got ultrasound making sure that you're not allowed to fall over things. That is really cool. Same sort of thing, but can we see problems? And yeah, we've been building something. So this is my day-to-day research. We've been building things to measure an ultrasonic drum, which we call it an ultrasonic drum because it sounds cooler. It looks like that. That is a £5 parking sensor from Amazon, because we love all of these parking sensors. I was going to bring some because they're brilliant. My car doesn't have any, but the one that we're driving today does. It's really weird. But the same thing, it sends out sound, listen for echoes. Now this is actually, when you cut it into pieces, it's a piece of aluminium. It's this little aluminium cap, and it's got something on the back that vibrates. And you put a little alternating current into it, and the frequency of the current that you put in means that the cap vibrates in different shapes. And if you're doing a parking sensor, you might want it to vibrate a bit like this, like a normal drum, so going backwards and forwards. But if you vibrate it at much higher frequencies, it does really interesting shapes. So this is a video of one of them, which we measured using a laser. So it took us 8 hours of scanning a laser backwards and forwards, and this is the face of it vibrating in an interesting pattern. But no one's got 8 hours to measure £5 parking sensors. So we were trying to come up with a way of doing it in a better way, which comes down to liquid crystals. Have any of you played with these things? It's called a thermochromic liquid crystal. It's a material that responds to temperature. So if I put my hand on, assuming I'm warm enough, I am, you can see the shade of my hand. And this is the sort of thing that you can make into forehead thermometers that change colour if you're trying to see how warm your kids are. That stuff is fun. Thermochromic means that its colour depends on the temperature. Inside, it's a liquid crystal, so it's something that can move around and flow, but you've got all these little molecules that are in a helix, in a spiral shape. And as you heat and cool it, the spiral stretches and shrinks. And the light that bounces off it, the wavelength, depends on this thing called the pitch, the distance between the spirals. So as you heat it up and cool it down, it goes from black through to red, all the way through to blue, and then black again. So this is really cool stuff, because it's colourful. I made a version of this that was black and white, and I showed it to some industry people. It was something that went clear to cloudy, and they said, yeah, whatever, can you do it colourful? So let me show you sound. So this is what we've made using some of this material and a few other bits. Now sound is energy, and if you can absorb energy into a sensor, you can turn it into heat. And heat, we can see with one of those. So this is a real-time video. Rather than 8 hours playing with a laser, this is a real-time video of this thing vibrating. And can you see all the rings on it? And then you turn it to a different frequency. And then you send it to the first frequency again, and it goes back to this kind of cross ring-shaped pattern, and back to the first one. This is real-time, rather than 8 hours. Now the 8 hours with the laser, it gives us all this data that we could do lots of analysis with. This looks pretty, but immediately you can tell what it's doing almost instantly. Now with this, we wanted to make something where you could see through a structure. And I'm going to say, first of all, we are crap at doing these sorts of measurements. So what you have to do to send the sound through this, it's a block of aluminium, we put some holes in the side, we put one of these colourful things on the front, and then we got an ultrasound transducer making the sound, and we moved it backwards and forwards. And we don't do that sort of moving things backwards and forwards. You have to cover everything in gel, you have to move it around steadily, and we were rubbish at it. But this is a 7 times sped up video of Martha, who's one of my students, moving it back. And every time the sound goes through, you can see the colour. Can you see there's a shadow in there? You can see there's a bit there where the sound isn't coming through, it's not making it through, which matches quite nicely that set of holes that we put in. So if you take that video and you pull out the saturation of each pixel in it, so you say, what's the maximum brightness? You get this picture, which matches nice. This is something that we could just stick on. We've got some paint on stuff, and one day someone's going to give me money to actually do this properly. But this is what we do more day to day, and it's trying to come up with using lots of different bits of physics to make something that's useful for industry. It's not as good as medical ultrasound, but it's quick, and maybe it can be a really nice screening thing. But I'm not here to talk about the research. I have to, because I'm an academic, and this is the sort of thing that we do. Any excuse to go, look, I've done some cool science, you take it. So, sorry. Have to. But I'm coming to talk about music. So you could say, what do I know about music? And the admission is not much. I did have a fraud alert up here when I thought Adrian Bossy was going to be talking. What I know about music, I've done a lot of choral singing, I've played a few different instruments. The main thing I know about music is if you go to a gig and someone's paid you to do making balloon animals at a festival or something like that, and you're making them while the music is going on, you feel the vibrations really clearly, and that's haptics. So for me, it's something which is just normal. If I go to somewhere that's loud and I've got a balloon, I know I feel the vibrations. But you can use that as a way of just experiencing more with the music. You can do that with things like the gaming chairs, with the haptics, with the buzzers that make vibrations, and the Ouija vests, which I have to play with one of them in a bit because I need to experience them. So there is the Ouija vests and the Music Not Impossible, where they're making the vests with the haptics in there so that you can feel the vibrations when you go and listen to music, and they've been used for lots of different music, and I'm so excited to actually get to try one because I've been learning about them for a little while. So those are fantastic. But as someone who, I'm also a massive nerd in a small package, but massive nerd in 4'10.5" worth of me. I like to build things, and I like to go, can we do things a bit differently? That's how I've got on with doing my research, and this is how I approach everything. So there's a question of, do we actually need to wear the vest to be able to feel the vibrations? Do we need to hold something physical? The answer is maybe not, because it would be wonderful if actually you could hold your hand out and feel something from the music. And obviously, if the music is loud enough, you can feel it inside your chest. I resonate quite a lot when I go to gigs or nightclubs, and it's really weird feeling my lungs vibrating as well. But imagine if you could put your hand out and feel in the air some of these sensations. And this is what we're working on by playing with some ultrasound toys. So it all comes down to waves. And if you've got waves on water, if you've got a big pond and you drop a stone in, then you get these waves spreading out in concentric circles. If you drop 2 stones in, then you start to see really interesting patterns in it. So probably the next one is a better. This is 2 things being dropped in, and you get regions where the waves are bigger, and then you get regions where the waves are quiet, and you've got almost nothing there. And it's because of a thing called interference. It's the waves interfering together. So physicists, sorry, also I stole it from Wikipedia because they do really nice diagrams. If you take 2 waves, so this is a wave going, it's going up and down, and you add them together. If the peaks and the troughs lie on top of each other, if you're in exactly the right point and exactly the right time, if they lie on top of each other, it gets bigger. If your peaks and your troughs are opposite way round, so you've got a peak and a trough together, then they add together to give you nothing. And you can use that to try and focus sound through the air, which is what our toy does. We didn't build it, we bought a really cool toy, so I feel a bit more like an engineer buying toys rather than building them. But we've got one of these haptics ultrasound boards. And what that does is you have, this is a picture with just 8 of these like parking sensors on, sending sound into the air, and if you control them so that these ones at the outside send the sound out first, and then the next one's in, and then the next one's in. Just like the immersive audio, you can control it so that the strongest bit is on a particular bit of your hand when it's held above it. So that was our toy. This is what it looks like. You've also got it over there. Comes with some software that means you can program it. But there are, I think, 233 of these little air-coupled ultrasound transducers, so making sound into the air. And you can control them so that they send it out in lots of different patterns, and you feel lots of really weird sensations on your hand. There are different ways you can control it. So you can control it so you've just got lots of spots on your hand and you're turning on and off at different spots, or you can move a spot at 200 times a second around on your hand. We've got it here with us, so you can all have a go. Rose has got some demos and we've got some music to play through it. But this is what it looks like if you measure it on something a bit like the liquid crystal sensors that we do, but without the colour. So this is dots making 3 different shapes, and this is just moving a dot around really quickly. So you can see the shapes are being made in the air and you can feel them. So what does this have to do with music? Well, when you take music, I'm a physicist, so I think of music as being numbers. And I think of music as being, we've got the rhythm, so the rhythm is important, and the pitch. And those are numbers, and I can clearly see that I can put numbers into something and get a different experience through haptics of what the music is. And this is how I would attack everything, unless you do interdisciplinary stuff. And through a student who was doing one of the public engagement modules, I got in touch with Freya, who's from theatre and performance studies. And so that brings out a whole different thing. I can think about the numbers and the technology, and that's what I know and I can do. But there's then the question of how does music make me feel? Because there's the performance aspect to it, and there's the intention. Someone writes a piece. They don't write a piece to go, here's a bunch of numbers. They go, this is to make people feel happy or sad or wistful. So, I stole things from Gentle's thesis. There were some diagrams that were brilliant. Gentle is our master's student. They finished now and they were fantastic. But they looked at things like, you've got the intention of the performer and the writer of the piece. They have an idea of what you should feel when you experience this music. You've got all the things that they can put in for the cues, like the tempo, the loudness, all of those sorts of things when you're playing your music. And then you've got the judgment of the listener. So Gentle came along to do a master's between performance and theatre studies and physics, which was a really challenging thing to do, and they did absolutely amazingly. So we worked on 3 pieces. And what Gentle did was, rather than saying, this is numeric, let's take out the pitch, the rhythm, let's just strip it to its basics, they looked at how does the different music make you feel. And I've got the 3 that they worked on, which I can play you, and then you can experience the haptic version. So lots of different options, and we asked people, what do these 3 pieces make you feel? If you recognise them, you get extra points. Any strong feelings on this one? Yeah, it's a happy little joyful thing. This is from a little frog computer game. I can't remember the name of it, but they were all computer games. Frog Detective, yeah. Number 2. basics and say it's still got the rhythm, it's still got the pitch, but that one feels a lot more chilling. Is this the Leighton Brothers? Yeah, so there's a detective game. And then number 3. This one is Spiritfarer. But if we're hearing, then we've learned. It's a little bit cultural and it's a little bit what you experience, but we can assign emotions to things that we've heard. But it's very difficult to do that if all you're getting is rhythm and pitch. Now, Gentle then sat down and programmed. So they went through all of these 3 musical pieces and tried to translate them and took them down to something different from what I would have done. So they took the basics and tried to write haptics music. So instead of just going, let's just translate the rhythm and the pitch, let's try and put some sensations onto your hand. Things like if you've got a nice sweeping sensation going up and down your hand, that might convey some of the sweepiness of some of these sounds. If you've got something that's really jarring going on and off, that might make you feel uncomfortable, like the middle one. And they looked at the different sorts of sensations that you could program in. And essentially did an analogue of this is the music. If you wrote it down with, this is actually the transcript of the song itself, which they even sat down and transcribed the music from listening to it. This is the measures or the bars translated into different movements. So trying to say, this is a Spiritfarer, so this was the last one, which is nice and sweeping, and they were taking lots of sensations that you could sweep all the way up and down your hand and in different patterns. So that was what was done. I've got a video of it and I can demonstrate it, but this is the amphibian hop, the first one. This is the hand, and the line shows what the hand should be feeling. I chose that one on the video just because that's the happy one and I'll make it the best because it's fun. Sorry, I'm off. Always go for the happy things. We've got that programmed in, so in a bit you can have a go at it and see what you think. But we took this out to an event, and it was a bit like this. We took over a bit of a community venue, and we got lots of people in, and we got them to try it out. And what we did was we gave them the options of how does this music sound to you, and we gave them different coloured stickers, but the coloured stickers depended on what piece of music they'd listened to. So we had the 3 different pieces of music, and we actually had 2 different sets. We've got the in-air haptics, and we've got something a bit more like Robin's one that's got the vibrating actuators, and you just put your hand on and you feel the vibrations. And we got them to vote for what they thought. So it's different colours for different songs. Now, all the way through, we had interested, expectant, picked up by everyone. But that's because it's a different way of experiencing music. But at the public event, if we looked at the most numbers that weren't the interested, expectant for the amphibian hop, it was up in the happy, elated. And that's partly because it's got the rhythm, and you can feel that, and it links into what we're used to hearing in terms of music. With the other ones, they didn't quite get maybe where we thought they would. So we got high scores in things like calm content for the one that, if you were hearing it, felt really eerie. But this was a first attempt to try and translate these pieces through and see what would happen. So I think I've also been quite fast because we want to show you the pieces and I need to move the laptop over. We've got 2 different kits. which you can experience the music on. So this one is just one that you put your hand on it and it vibrates. We've got different sorts of foam, and the different foams, some of them are soft, some of them are harder, so different bits of the hand you feel it slightly differently, but they are lots of little actuators just vibrating in there. And then we've got the haptics board, which I spent a long time trying to get someone to give me some money for, because I wanted to play with it because it's a really cool toy. Just to say, there's 3 of us here. So Freya is the performance person, and we've got Rose as well. Rose is... I knew I was going to do that. It's my fault, so it's okay if I'm destroying that. Rose is doing a summer project, so they're an undergraduate in the physics department, and they're looking at, can you use this technology to translate things like star fields? So can you take a star field, which is just a picture of lots of different stars which have got intensities and they have got different ages, and translate it into something that you can feel on your hand? And they've also tried doing the deaf-blind alphabet using the haptics. So we'd love it if you wanted to come and have a look at it and have a go and have a feel and tell us what you think. And if we're doing something useful or not. I'm academic, I don't always care too much, but it's nice to do something that is actually going to be useful for someone. So we would love a lot of input in telling us what we should be doing next with it. And I just want to finish by Oksana and Martha, and my liquid crystal collaborators, gentle Freya, who have done all the music stuff. So thank you. So that was the happy and sad we've got with the major and minor keys. And you don't have that context with the touch, and that's something that we tried a little bit, but I think it's easier to do more of the dissonances because you can do things popping up in places where you're not expecting it. But yeah, the major minor is hard.
One interesting thing with that is our interpretation of major and minor is essentially the training also for our entire lives. And the really exciting thing with haptics is it's not a modality that's really small much. There's the opportunity to then, I guess, broaden horizons in terms of that start from scratch. Which is also
Choose the...
exactly. You can choose, you can target participant training to then manipulate exactly what you want to be.
Yeah, so the discussion of it is a new training because you don't know what to expect from it. And yeah, it might be easier to then go in with, let's teach people this is happy, this is sad.
That's interesting. So I've always been reviewed to watch films that have been scored where something you traditionally have on a minor key, if the major key at the top of it, you can potentially get somebody to start thinking that the major key is music that makes them sad. Is that, I don't know?
It's been explored in some like Scandinavian horror genres and things like that. Films can also sound traditionally happy over some pretty horrific visual media to like change the way that like explore how sound influences your perception of visual media.
Yeah. So is that, so that's when we do like that,
We do it,
it'd be distant, because
Yeah.
if you go, this does not match, but if you had somebody like exercise, you put in a box for a child, and you only show, they would just only have that, and yeah.
Yeah, it's why a lot of these things are cultural as well, because it depends on the music that you're surrounded by and what you're listening. But certainly when you take something like a horror movie and you dub it with something that's more major comic music, it suddenly becomes funny.
It's interesting that you listen to this a bit more ambiguous as well, because you, when you don't have a visual cue to go off on, then you only have the audio. That it really does shape.
That is one of the ones actually interesting is a lot of people use haptics for like sound healing and stuff like that. And you've got this strange suspicion when you start looking at it that for some reason a lot of the like chakra frequencies or chakra, however you say that, words are hard. Those frequencies somehow perfectly align with a Western scale of tuning, and it really is, like, is this actually something, or is it we're playing these whole tone notes that we recognise? Something must be going on, because, and that is one of those biases which I think a lot of people don't realise is a thing. Is you started getting these bands now who are doing things where they're not necessarily following Western tuning, or they're doing weird microtonality and stuff, and I was like, this sounds wrong, and it's another one of, well, it's been taught that that sounds wrong, which if, I think actually there was a lovely point mentioned in a talk you can watch by the one and only Lee Holder talking about this, about how when pianos became more standardised, there are notes which are different but became merged, and so there are these frequencies which is kind of have been taught are wrong, which weren't necessarily always wrong. So it is about that correlation and making those links. So I imagine it's a thing where it could be taught well, this pattern that I'm feeling means this. It's one of the ones where with the haptics, it was, if we have a larger grid, you can teach someone how to feel for the direction something's coming from, and then you can bring it down to 2 like you would with headphones. It's like a lot of the people who have less good spatial awareness find that binaural music or like surround sound mixing for headphones doesn't seem to work as well for them, is because those cues of the distance of something based on the time it arrives and all of that are things which haven't been learned and trained and practiced as much. So yeah, that is possibly the answer to that. Sorry to hijack a little bit.
No, we came here wanting this sort of discussion and input.
Can you think of a way that the haptics could be used for people who perhaps have got like one other sense that is impaired in some way? So thinking of ways that it could be used for people who've got visual hearing but picking up other things through haptics.
I think it could, because that fits in a little bit with what your summer project is. So we're working with some astrophysicists who are trying to take these star fields and turn them into sound. And it's all about, if you can't actually see the stars, how can you appreciate where they're actually sighted, so where the stars are, how bright they are, things like that. So they're turning it into sound so that it can work through which appears first, which is the brightest. Strangely, the first star field they've done, you listen to it and it sounds just like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, which apparently they get all the time.
Interesting looking at how can you see sounds and how can you feel what you see. It's a fun correlation.
Yeah.
It reminds me a bit of graphic scoring, which is this kind of quote-unquote avant-garde music thing where instead of having an actual score, performers would kind of be given these drawings and told to convert this into music, and a lot of what that feels like is you were having music and you were converting it to a graphic score, so doing the opposite, which was really lovely. I was like, is there a way that you could kind of eventually turn this into, obviously it's not maybe the goal, but turn this into a type of notation which is more standardised by doing the hand graphic scoring element. That
I'm going to
sounds...
have to look at graphic scoring.
I can show you a photo because I just got it up on here. But like, this is graphic scoring,
That's exactly it.
and this is graphic scoring.
Did something like that as well. You've been shown something like that. It's called like Roluna or something, and it's an organ piece. The ways that I've heard it been interpreted are interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
But it'd be really cool if we could use the sort of the haptic sensory modality to make that something that exists outside of the sounds that are typically associated with post-1910 art music.
Yes.
Because they can be quite inaccessible, which is a shame,
Yes.
but yeah.
Make noise with it now, aren't they? You seen that?
Yes. For context, Make Noise is a synthesizer company who makes lovely Eurorack modules, but for a lot of their modules they have pictograms to explain what things do instead of actually kind of a label, because they're trying to
No, I mean, they've actually got a project at the moment.
Oh, they
where
started-
they're
oh my
digitally
God.
storing stuff.
Yes, I have seen this. I hadn't realised that that was an official thing. I thought that was someone taking the mick out of their pictogram labels. That's really good.
They let you submit them and then they kind of interpret them on all their gear and everything like that.
Oh, that's joyous.
It's very interesting.
We got lots more things to look up.
It's the reason you come visit, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel.